The views expressed on the following broadcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. The dialogue on this show should not be considered as medical, psychiatric, or professional advice and is delivered only as personal opinions from the host, co-host, and guest. KHLT Recovery Broadcasting is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Chasing after this world makes me tired. Praising my own name leaves me dry. There's gotta be so much more to life than this. A higher calling that I missed. I want my life to count every breath. I wanna live with abandon.
And now, here's your host, Eve D., Bruce H., and the Monty Man.
Every part of my heart, Jesus, I place
Well, good day to all of you fine folks out there in recovery world. Welcome to Open Forum here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial with the Monty Man and Eve D. Bruce is not with us today. He's out gallivanting around doing something.
The scallywag.
He's scallywagging. He's out there scallywagging, doing what scallywags do. So Eve and I are here today, and welcome to the show. This week we're going to be talking about a couple of things. We're going to be talking about sponsorship, and if time allows here, we're also going to be talking about grief and what do they have to do with each other. I'm not sure. We're just going to kind of see how this works. I do know this though. When you are experiencing grief, it's really important to have some kind of support system around you. And sometimes that will come in the form of a sponsor, a mentor, a spiritual advisor.
Yes.
Somebody that you respect and can talk to about what's going on. So we're going to talk about that at the close of the show. But before we do any of that, I want to remind you of South Albany High School. It proudly presents Donkey Basketball. I just can't get over this.
Proudly presents.
Proudly presents. It says you got a picture of a donkey that's very proud there.
There's no shame there.
In no shame. Tuesday, April 1st. Tuesday, April 1st at the Lynn County Fair and Expo Center, and this is to raise money to help defray family expenses for Coach Jason Henkel. Who is living with stomach cancer, and this is to help pay for his treatment. He is a coach at South Albany High School, and he's one of these coaches that the kids just rally around and just love him, and everybody is very concerned, and so they're doing this. They're having this donkey basketball game to raise funds. Tickets are $10 for adults, $6 for students, and $4 for children K through 6. And you can get your tickets out at South Albany High School. If you want to donate to this, you don't have to live here. You could be living on the East Coast. We have a lot of listeners out there. If you want to donate to this thing and buy a ticket and then send somebody to the donkey basketball game to help raise money, just give me a call here, would you? Just go to our contact link, and I'll tell you how you can do that. For those of you in the area, Tuesday, April 1st, donkey basketball, Lynn County Fairgrounds, to help support Coach Jason Henkel. Okay. Now, next. We're going to be talking about sponsorship. For those of you who are sponsors and think you know it all, you might know more than we do.
Probably.
But hang in there with us, and you never know. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe we will miss something, and you can email us here and let us know some of your ideas. But sponsorship within a recovery a setting, a fellowship, and working a program is so vitally important because you know that saying, Eve, that some people tell new people, take what you need, leave the rest.
Yes.
One of the most dangerous things I've ever heard in a meeting.
That's right.
Because when we're new, we don't know what we need.
Hey, even old timers, if they just took what they liked.
Yeah, because that's how we
dangerous.
interpret that.
That's right.
Well, I'm not going to take what you need. I'm going to take what I like. And I like that girl over there. She looks pretty cute. And I don't like working this step, so I'll skip it.
That's right. I don't need that.
I don't need this. I don't need
got
that.
this. I got this.
You know, so if you're attending a 12-step fellowship and you're not working the 12 steps, what are you doing in a 12-step fellowship? That's my question. I don't get it. You know, it's like going to the what is it, the chef's college, Cordon Bleu or whatever, and going there to work on cars. I mean, I don't want to cook. I want to build engines. Well, then go build engines. But gee whiz. So what are you doing in a 12-step program if you're not doing the 12 steps? I don't get it. And one of the reasons that people don't get started on this process is because sometimes they don't have anybody to walk them through it.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And I think probably one of the biggest dangers is having somebody sponsor you but not have you go through the book, the 12 steps. That's very dangerous because then you think you've done that, been there, done that, and found it wanting.
Yeah, your sponsor needs to be more in the phone number. Mm-hmm. You know, and one of the things I want to talk about when we talk about this is, you know, how people will say in 12-step support meetings, well, you really should save that for your sponsor, or, you know, talk about, if you're not going to talk in general about your experience, strength, and hope, and you're going to go deeper, talk to your sponsor. But then we tell sponsors, don't give advice.
Yes.
Well, and so the newcomer's going, what? My sponsor won't give, I'm not going to give you any advice. Well, they told me to talk to you. We'll go to the meeting and share it. Well, they told me not to. You know, there's a lot of confusion there. So hopefully we'll be able to clear some of that stuff up. So let's hear from our sponsors for the first half of this show. Origins and Therapia. Don't go away.
As men and women who have recovered from utterly hopeless states of addiction ourselves, we know all too well what it's like to battle addiction daily. We are Origins Recovery Centers. Here at Origins, we have taken that which we have learned along the way, excised anything unhelpful and unnecessary, infused it with the latest medical research and innovative therapeutic methods, and created what we know to be the absolute gold standard in substance abuse treatment. And Origins provides the most preeminent aftercare and relapse prevention program available in the United States. For a free confidential clinical assessment, call toll-free 888-843-8935. That's 888-843-8935. Origins, delivering real solutions for real families.
Men, women, and their families experience tremendous pain and suffering due to the struggles they face from substance abuse and its co-occurring mental health challenges. They need to find a safe place for peace and healing. Therapia Addiction Healing Center was born out of a deep desire to provide that safe and powerful healing environment. Therapia exists to help people recover from addictions by developing and maintaining healthy, meaningful relationships with God, self, and others. To speak with an addiction specialist, call 1-855-652-4325. That's 1-855-652-4325. Or visit our website at www.therapia.net. Therapia Addiction Healing Center, restoring lives one step at a time.
Okay, welcome back. Oh, there was our trivia thing. Yes. And we're going to make a phone call. We're going to try again. Useless trivia. And Cecil's on vacation on a he, she, or it, or whatever Cecil is resting. Okay, so we're going to try and get a hold of Lisa again. We tried last week, and she was out watering the dog. Why would I say that? Walking the dog or something. So we're going to try again and see if we can get a hold of Lisa on the phone. And by the way, I think I'm going to do this. If you would like to play trivia with us and win a goodie, a recovery goodie, send us email us and send us your phone number. And we tape the show on Wednesday mornings, usually beginning at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Closer to 10:30.
Closer to 10:30.
Yes.
So be by your phone. Send us your phone number and your name, And if you do that, we may call you.
Yes.
And have you play with us. And then, everybody's a winner that plays. So
Yes, and you too can be humiliated.
That's right. That's right. Okay, we're gonna try and get a hold of Lisa here.
Please enjoy this Verizon ringback tone while your party is reached.
Okay, we will.
She's not going to be there again today. That brat.
Maybe she will. Lisa, we're calling you. Hello?
Hi, you've reached 3451.
Okay, that's it. That's it.
Well, Lisa, sorry.
3 strikes, you're out.
Right, you're out. Okay. Oh, wow. And she's probably stumbling around and dropped the phone.
Yes.
Okay. Well, here's our useless trivia. This week it's brought to you by DJTech.net. DJTech.net with some wonderful useless trivia. Three trivia questions and a bonus for Eve. All right, Eve, which of these accidents kills more people annually than airplane crashes?
All right.
Okay. Number 1, accidents with unicycles, accidents with barbecues, or accidents with donkeys.
Accidents with barbecues.
Well, you're wrong. It's actually accidents with donkeys.
Are you kidding me right now?
Yes. More people are killed annually by accidents with donkeys than on airplane crashes.
And we're promoting the donkey basketball game.
Yeah, I know. I just saw that.
There's something sick about that, Monty, got to tell you.
There is. Okay, question number 2. 1/4 of the bones in your body are located in this place. Number 1, your spine. Number 2, your hands. Number 3, your feet.
Well, hands and feet have a lot, but I think the feet, with all their many phalanges.
You are absolutely correct. It is the feet.
Yes.
Yes, you got one. Oh, yes. All right. Question number 3. Right-handed people do what on an average longer than left-handed people? Here are your choices. Drive longer. I wonder what that means. They drive longer distances or drive for a longer period of time. Live longer or can carry a musical note longer. Right-handed people do this longer than left-handed people.
Okay. I will say carry a musical note longer.
Well, you're wrong. It's actually they live longer.
Okay, I was going to guess that, but then I thought, no, you would have heard about that. Maybe all those left-handers are keeping that under wraps.
Actually,
They're
live
keeping
longer.
it 6 feet under.
They live longer, a minimum of 9 months to 9 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
All right, here is your bonus question for the mega prize. We don't know what that is. There is approximately one of these for every human being in the world. Approximately one. Okay, here are your choices. Chicken, bicycle, jellyfish. There's one of these for every person in the world. Chicken, a bicycle, or a jellyfish.
I'm going to say chicken.
You're correct.
Oh,
chicken.
my goodness.
Yes,
Wow.
Absolutely. And that takes care of Take 12 useless trivia for this week.
I ain't eating that chicken.
Yeah. And with the new legalization of marijuana laws, it's not a chicken in every pot; it's a pot for every chicken. I guess I don't know. That's gonna. I think that's gonna be a topic here one of these days soon. Is the benefits and the drawbacks of medical marijuana and or other prescription drugs. One of the things that I've always wondered about was why, if we're legalizing, we'll address this when we do it. Why, if we're legalizing another mind-altering substance, aren't for medical purposes? Why aren't we dispensing it through the pharmacies? Mm-hmm. Why are we opening up head shops and dispensing them through there? I don't get it. So maybe somebody can email me and tell me, because surprisingly, there's a lot of people in recovery that are for the legalization of marijuana. And I'm not talking about the decriminalization of possession, because there's a difference.
Yes.
Because I am somewhat understanding of that, because I think that treatment and that kind of thing is much more effective than throwing somebody in jail. But hey, if you guys out there listening have any ideas about why are we dispensing medical marijuana through head shops and novelty stores, Circle K's, AMPMs, things like that in Colorado, instead of through the pharmacy. So if you got an idea about that, let me know, because I'm at a loss. I don't know that much about it. So okay, we're going to talk about sponsorship and what is a sponsor, what a sponsor isn't. Excuse me, and some of the reasons that I put together why I think it's important that a person has a sponsor, at least why I need to have somebody in my life anyway. Okay, so let's start out. Eve, you work with women. Let's start right off the bat, and let me ask your opinion about same-sex work when it comes to sponsorship. And we know of a couple of people that there's been an exception to that. But for the most part, why is it important that somebody works with a member of the same sex?
Well, I think probably because some of the telltale characteristics of males and females is different. So I'd be able to recognize some of the BS that other women might come up with just because it's typical. And that's a stereotype. And, you know, this isn't 1935 anymore.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of changes. There's a lot more equality between men and women. And now we've got the gay and lesbian community, transgender. We've got a lot of issues that could actually play into whether that's as important now as it was in 1935. Sure. But for the most part, apart from, gender-specific issues, I think it's just better in general. We understand each other more. There's things that are more specific to a certain gender than other things. And, for all intents and purposes. But like you said, it's not always the best thing.
Right.
And that just depends on the circumstance.
You bet. You bet. Each individual circumstance needs to be looked at as an individual circumstance. And, I'm really glad you said that, because, a lot of people think, well, the biggest reason that we do with the same sex is so there's no compromise as far as a relationship goes.
No crossing boundaries.
Right. However, and though that's important, I am really on that same page with you. Men think differently than women. And men know how men think, women know how women think, and we process things differently. We think with different sides of our brain. And so I may be going through something that only a guy is going to be able to understand that. And it might be real difficult for me to identify with a member of the opposite sex with certain issues, because we're talking about issues in recovery many times that are very painful and sometimes very deep, very detailed. And we just do think differently, and so that's a good idea. But you brought up a really good point. I always chuckled a little bit, but out of concern whenever I see gender specific treatment facilities, like this is a men's center and this is a women's center. I do believe they should not be co-ed. For the most part, I don't think it works as well if they are. But I always chuckle, because many times with people in recovery, inappropriate sexual behavior has been a part of their MO.
Yes.
And And so what if you have somebody who is homosexual that has been acting out in that area, just like somebody who was heterosexual was acting out.
Exactly.
And they're in an all-male treatment center or all-female treatment center. That isn't addressed.
No, it's not.
Well,
it certainly could be and should be.
Yes.
But then you're really splitting hairs.
Aren't you?
How many treatment centers?
What are you going to do?
Yeah, it makes it difficult. So it's best just to have some rules in place, and those that violate those rules,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I still think the same gender is usually advisable, even if there's a gay man and he's got a straight sponsor. Is there going to be a problem there? I think that, what's that phrase? I think you protest too much. I think sometimes we create scenarios that may not even exist.
Yes, and we can't make an assumption that boundaries are going to be crossed. There's very healthy people of all different sexual preferences that aren't going to cross those boundaries. They have strong moral beliefs and ethics, and that's healthy and that's good.
Yeah.
So the same way, whereas in certain cases it's okay for a woman to sponsor a man and a man to sponsor a woman if there's not going to be any boundaries that are crossed. Now I'm thinking, let me just throw something out here. There might be a woman who's been so severely abused by her mother, that she really can't even, she'd be so triggered to deal with another woman. And so to find a safe male sponsor might be a good thing. Yeah. Now, I'm really I am really creating a scenario that would probably be quite rare, but still.
Very real, though. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very real. And so you've got situations where you have to take into consideration the person that's sitting in front of you. What is the very best for the other person.
You bet. So there are exceptions, and so okay. So let's move on from that. We have talked before how in the days that in the early days that the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous was published. People that worked, the word sponsor really didn't appear there. There's a chapter called Working with Others.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like the word rapture. People say, well, rapture's not in the Bible, but it does talk about being caught up in the air. So it's kind of the same thing with the Big League. It doesn't say sponsor. We've kind of given it that title, and there's some history behind that we don't have time to go into right now. But for whatever reason, a sponsor is somebody that can come alongside you and help you in the recovery process to reach a point in your life of a state of being recovered. And if you're going by the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that state of being recovered is absolutely it's real. It's a goal to reach. Some people it takes more time than others. It just depends. Everybody's an individual. But a sponsor is somebody that it can be a mentor, somebody that definitely has certain character qualities, I believe, and amongst them would be somebody that is closed-mouthed.
Yes.
Somebody that is, I will say, for lack of a better term, trustworthy. I believe we should trust God and love people, and sometimes we have hard times trusting people. But I think the listeners know what I mean. It's somebody that you feel safe with. How do you know that, though? Now, before we talk about the sponsor making the approach to the up and coming sponsee,
yes,
let's talk about what normally goes on today, and that's usually a new member will approach a prospective sponsor. How do you know who to choose? I mean, it's kind of risky, isn't it?
It is, but I think if a person has been listening to somebody else, they'll make a decision based on their own thinking. And whether they're picking somebody that's trustworthy or somebody that is hardline. I mean, the very first time I chose a sponsor, I chose the meanest woman in the room.
Now, did you do that because you'd heard other people had done that, or did you do that because you really believed that's what you needed?
I believed that that's what I need. I needed somebody to get in my face. That's what I thought, that I needed, like a drill sergeant. And that turned out to not be the case.
Not be the case.
Well, I just ended up avoiding her at all costs. So maybe that was my intention to begin with, because as it turned out, my MO was to avoid anybody that required me to work any of those steps.
But by golly, I'm going to pick one that's like that.
Yeah, so let me retract that. No. Yeah, we make decisions when we're approaching somebody to be our sponsor. We're making the decision using our own thinking, which we know is not always the right thing.
Sure.
But I think in general, people are choosing somebody based on what they think is best for them. On the other hand, and you said, we're going to talk about this, the book tells us that when you make your approach to the person, it says the man, but
yeah.
Today it could be either or, when you're making the approach. So, and I know for me personally,
now we're talking about the sponsor.
The sponsor
approaching
the newcomer.
Sponsor, yeah.
And I don't know what other people have done. I have paid attention to what God is leading me to do. And one of my sponsees is a really good example of that. I was actually very, very busy. And, I approached her. I happened to be chairing the meeting, and I approached her at the break. And she reeked of alcohol. And she said some things that she had been through treatment before. She was not doing well physically. Mm-hmm. She knew that she needed to do this. And I said, well, I can't remember what I asked her, but I was just asking her in general, do you have a sponsor or something like that? And she said something to the effect that she had her tools, she just had to use them, which of course is, that's trouble right there. And so my thinking was, I went back to my chair and started to, maybe I approached her before the meeting, because when I opened the meeting, and then I'm thinking, I don't have time to sponsor this woman, but we said the serenity prayer, and then you go on and you say, if there's anybody that would be interested in helping clean up after the meeting, please raise your hand. And she raised her hand. And I just got this feeling that I was supposed to approach her. And so I did, and it turned out to be a phenomenal experience for me in particular, because I saw how obedience to what God is asking you to do, it doesn't matter how overburdened you are time-wise. If God wants you to do something, He'll make the time. And it turned out to be a much bigger blessing in my life than hers, I'm sure. But it's continued to be a good working relationship. And, so incorporate prayer, I would say, in when you're making an approach. Another thing that I listen for is people that are the real deal.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, people that come in that look like their backside is falling off, Monty? How's that for? People who make comments such as, I got sober and things got worse. That's real typical for the real alcoholic, because their comfort and their solution to life's problems is no longer in their life. And that's real typical of a real alcoholic. Somebody who says, I've tried everything and I can't stop. Those types of comments, and if you're familiar with the book, you know what I'm talking about. You know what it is. There's definitions in the book about the real alcoholic. So that type of person is who I want to work with, because I'm of the opinion that if they can stop on their own, there's really no need to go through the steps. I mean, they'll be better off, but getting them to see their need to do that will be next to impossible.
Sure. And because there are people that just need to to knock it off. Just need to grow up.
Yeah.
And like the book talks about it, sometimes there'll be something significant that will happen.
Yes.
And that'll be enough for them to quit. But we're talking about the heavy drinker or the alcohol abuser or the addict or narcotic abuser, but it really isn't addicted.
Yes.
And for the listener's benefit that you may be new to listening, we're talking about somebody that has the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. To put it in simpler terms, when you drink, you cannot control the amount you drink, and when you're sober, you can't stay that way.
Yes.
And there are people that get DUIs, and there are people that get into trouble, and that seems to be all it takes.
Yes.
And they come into meetings, and I'm glad they're there. I think we made a good call.
Yes.
To have open meetings.
Of course.
But they may not be the people that you want to commit to working with to the degree that it takes to work with a real alcoholic or a real addict. Because it does take an investment of your life into somebody else's life.
It really does. A lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of time can go into, because I sponsor others how I was sponsored and continue to be sponsored by the book. I read. There's not a page that's left unread in this book.
Exactly.
And I think that it's really important. As my sponsor said, how you can have a belief about something. Well, I believe what the book says, but you aren't going to know until you do the investigation yourself.
Yeah, right on. And so in the old days, the person who had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps made the approach, and many times it started out with a visit, perhaps, to their home, and the book talks about leaving a copy of the book there. Sometimes not even with them aware of it, you just leave it on the coffee table or whatever. And then it talks about a second visit.
Yes.
It also talks, interestingly enough, about communicating with the family.
Yes.
Which is something I don't hear a lot anymore.
No.
But that is an important element. Can you share on that a little bit?
Well, I don't know how much I can share about this because I really don't know how, when I'm thinking of the grassroots of AA, they were meeting in homes and they were inviting the spouse, usually the wife, and they were inviting them in and just making them a part of it. They saw what others didn't, and that was that it was a family disease. They saw that. Right. And so everybody was affected, and they just wanted the restoration of the family. And in our culture, we don't see the importance of that anymore, I think, as part of it. In treatment centers do this, at least the good ones. They'll have family programs, and they will stress to family members the importance of Al-Anon, Alateen, of learning about the disease of addiction.
Right.
And on this note, I'll just throw this out there. Less people get involved in Al-Anon than those that get involved in AA or NA. Usually family members, when they find out that they might have a problem, the walls go up. And that's what we see in treatment modalities at any rate. I don't know.
You bet. You bet. It's their problem. Why should I miss my football game to go to a family day when it's their issue, not mine?
Yeah, the codependent has spent their life dancing around and trying to get the other one fixed. And when they think that they've accomplished that, and it's they that have done it, and here's the ego, here's the I that we read about in Bill's story so much, here's the I of the codependent, and then you say, well, you've played a part in this. That's a hard hit.
And we've been talking about that on this workshop we've been doing with Tony Messbarger about getting the family on board, and getting them to see that they have played a part.
Yes.
And that is a real slap in the face.
It is, and yet it's so important because once somebody goes into recovery, I liken it to imagine cogs turning, and everybody in the family is a different cog, and they all are going a certain way to
Yeah.
run smoothly. And then you lock up that one cog of the alcoholic who's now starting in recovery,
Right.
and they start going the other way. Ooh, it just throws the whole
You bet.
mechanism out of order. And there's a lot of sabotage that goes on to get the alcoholic or the addict to return to use. Even they wouldn't know that. They would be unaware that unconscious or a subconscious wanting to sabotage to
Yeah.
get that cog moving in the same direction again. You know, it's kind of like the alcoholic who comes into the rooms of AA and all they want to do is stop having consequences to their drinking.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the family members. They just want the alcoholic to stop being a pain, to stop getting in so much trouble, to stop being mean or whatever it is that they're doing. That's the problem. It's not necessarily the alcohol itself.
And they don't realize many times
Yeah.
that they have grown accustomed to this behavior, so much so that when they get their wish, they don't know how to live with this person. You know, Dad would just give money away. I knew a guy that just
Yes.
his kid, Dad, give me 20. Yeah, no problem. You know, because he was drunk all the time.
And
Here's
guilt
$20.
and feeling guilt and shame.
Yeah, and so now the kids are going to Dad, can I have $20? No, we're saving our money now. We're doing
Yes.
it. And all of a sudden they're like, what's going on with Dad? And they get mad and they get angry and resentful, you know. And why do you get to get better? And then they realize how sick they are.
Well,
Now they're
hopefully.
hopefully. But a person can really get ticked off.
Yes.
Because, well, you made me sick. You know, so it's important that the family and the loved ones and sometimes best friends or even employers seek some assistance in
Yes.
this thing.
Can I back up a little
Yes.
bit, Monty? There's something that I want to read from the book because this is so important. We just got done talking about how much time that you will invest in working with others, or if you're a sponsee, how much time you can look forward to investing in your own life. But it says on page 90 in the big book, in the chapter Working with Others, about halfway down, it says, let his family or a friend ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. So if the person says no, and I'm going to tell you this is a wonderful way to approach a person if you are a sponsor, because I will tell you I have had a handful of women say no. I'm
Interesting.
not willing to go to any length. And I have applauded them. I've given them a hug. Thank you for being honest because you just saved me a lot of work. And you have not ruined a chance with that person. Because if you start working with somebody else and they end up getting resentful because they're just not ready to go there, you may be ruining an opportunity for them to become willing and ready to do the work.
You bet.
Those same women, if they are the real alcoholic and if they progress, they'll remember that and they'll know whether they're really ready to go to any length or not.
That's really good. Can you read that again? Because I want to focus on a couple of points.
Okay. Well, it just says that ask them if he wants to or they want to quit for good.
For good. Let's stop there for a second.
Okay.
I get the heart between the statement one day at a time.
Yes.
But it was not a part of the original program.
That was an Al-Anon.
That's right. Yes, we do live one day at a time. I mean, how can you not? I mean, you can't. You can't physically live in the past. We haven't developed time travel yet. You can't physically live in the future. You have to live in today.
Yes.
And we have all sorts of cutesy sayings about all that kind of stuff. But according to the program, the person needed to be willing to quit for good and for all. Not just today. I'm just going to not drink today. No, you needed to be willing to quit good for all. Now you live that out day to day.
Yes.
Yes, we do that. But it's important that you have a willingness to give this stuff up
Yeah.
for good.
That's right.
You know, and we teach a different story sometimes within the meetings, you know, and they go read the second part.
So the second part says if he would go to any extreme to do so.
Yeah.
And that's a big one because it's going to be work.
And we're not talking about, because I've heard this before. Well, my sponsor said that if I was willing to strip naked and run around the freeway, with black soot all over my face, I would have done it. Nobody's asking you to do that. I mean, come on, don't be ridiculous. We're talking about stuff that'd probably be easier. We're talking about stuff.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Nobody's gonna. If anybody's asking you to come over every day and take out their garbage, wash their car, and mow their lawn, to be a good sponsee, you need to run, because that's not what it's all about. Now, there's nothing wrong with hooking up with your sponsor or your sponsee and you guys doing a chore together. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you want to do that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But when you're requiring your sponsee to fulfill tasks that are your responsibility at home or at work, and you're using that to try to hoard it over them, you need to stay busy, so you need to paint my bathroom.
I've never heard of that happening, but it appears that you do, and I've heard you make mention of that before.
Right.
So I don't know where that comes from, but yeah, that's a kind of an odd request to make of a sponsee.
I've noticed it more in Narcotics Anonymous than I have in Alcoholics Anonymous, but that's just been my experience. That doesn't mean that it's that way in every part of the country. It's just been something that I experienced. I want to touch on. There's five things here that my experience has been why I need to have somebody in my life that can walk me through this process.
Yes.
And their accountability, pride, honesty, objectivity, and encouragement. And I'm just going to read this to you. I wrote this a long time ago, and I pulled it up, and it really remains true. Accountability. Having another man in my life who knows enough about me to ask the hard questions has been a vital dimension of my personal walk of recovery. To be honest about it, there are times when I've actually walked away from temptation more because I did not want to be embarrassed by confessing it to a sponsor than because it was the right or best thing to do. Simply the accountability sometimes was enough to get me moving to the next level.
Yes.
Pride, ego, grandiosity, and self-centeredness are all issues with recovering people. The Bible is full of admonitions about this. Pride goes before a fall, and God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble, etc. Ultimately, a sponsor helps me to keep from getting trapped by my own false sense of powerfulness, and keeps me in reality, which is another word for humility. So he helps me with my pride. I give him permission to yank on my chain, even if he's wrong. I'd rather that he be wrong and call me on something than be right and not say anything, and then I'm in trouble.
Yes.
Honesty. It's really easy to fool others and even myself. I've learned how to look really good outwardly while I'm doing terribly inwardly. Even in support groups. Here again, if I've been open with my sponsor about my personal issues, he will hold me accountable and nail me when I've slipped into dishonesty. And my sponsor has said before, is that really true? And I'm like, yeah, well, no. And I'm not talking about a lie about, I won this amount of money or I took this girl out. I'm talking about things that have to do with my spirit, my sight. How you feeling today? I'm feeling really good. Really? I know you. Is that really true? Objectivity. Stinky thinking is a real trap. Having a person committed to being a sounding board for me gives me someone who can say stuff like, I don't think you are perceiving that correctly, or have you considered this might be what's really going on? This is especially helpful in the always difficult area of relationships in which all recovering people struggle. Most others in our lives have some vested interest in how we behave or how well we do in our lives. It's hard for these folks to be very objective. So we need someone outside of our primary family, work, etc., or relationships who doesn't have as much at stake to help us to steer a clear course.
Yes. I'm reminded of step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs,
Right.
which is a process that hopefully will never stop. And it has
Yeah.
it has a biblical root in James 5:16. Confess your sins one to another so that you may be healed. And so, no matter what, I hope you, the listener, have a James 5:16 person in your life, somebody that you trust, whether that's a sponsor or a friend or somebody that you feel comfortable enough to confess your deepest, darkest sins, character defects, however
Right.
you want to use that word, and your fears.
Yeah.
To be able to talk about these things, because the bottom line is God is the one that heals us. God is the one that transforms us. And so by doing that is a biblical principle. God does use that experience. You know, a lot of things in regards to shame, and when we're involved in sin or our character defects are rearing their ugly heads, there's always shame attached to that. Always shame.
Oh, yes.
And because shame is a social problem, it's rooted in social. I have shame not because of me as just a person alone on this earth. I have shame because I'm worried about what you think about me. I have shame because somebody has told me this is wrong. You know, it's a social problem. And so we need a social contact in order to, you know, God was very wise in that, or is very wise
Yeah.
in setting that up for us. And so you were right to begin the program about somebody that we need to trust.
You
And
bet.
So there,
You bet. Absolutely. I need somebody in my life that if I tell them something, they're not going to say, well, gee, I would never thought that of you.
Yes.
You know, and people that have worked with me, the ones that I've grown to really trust and believe that God is working through them, are ones I can tell. I can look in their eyes, and there's nothing. It's like, wait, well, you know what? I was thinking about doing this, and they're like, okay. They're not shocked. They're not blown away.
Yes.
You know, it's not something that's going to devastate them. Mm-hmm. Because I did have a sponsor that he didn't want to hear my 5th step. It was too heavy for him. And he didn't even know what it was yet because we hadn't finished the 4th step.
Yes.
Oh, well, that happens sometimes. And the last one is encouragement. I find I am apt to get down on myself at times, often because of things over which I have little or no control. Having an objective, supportive person who understands the process of recovery helps me to keep a healthy perspective on things. Usually I find I'm doing better than I might think. And even when I'm not doing so well, my sponsors have provided the hope and support I've needed to move forward and to do the often difficult things that are necessary to keep growing.
I really like that a lot. I'm so grateful that I have somebody in my life who, when I am caught up in the confusion of my own thinking,
Yeah.
can easily see where I'm blind. And that is the beautiful thing about having a sponsor, somebody that you trust. It's been so helpful for me.
What happens when somebody that you have bared your soul to breaks confidentiality?
Well, that has actually happened
Yeah.
for me. It's not a good process, like any other place in my life where that has happened, because it's happened in and out of the rooms. It's not a good experience. However, I didn't give up on having a sponsor.
Right.
You know, I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and it was an isolated experience. A lot of times the addict within us will justify not doing that again, not having a sponsor again because of the experience. But I would caution anybody who has used that as an excuse to just, you know, don't lose faith. Continue to look, pray about it, pray about the person. And then again, like we talked about earlier, not too many people are making the approach anymore. It
Sure.
is the person that needs a sponsor who's usually approaching.
And I think we need to remember that we're talking about people that aren't perfect, and my I had a sponsor tell me one time, because I had told somebody who wasn't a sponsor, but I had told something to somebody in confidence. He goes, "Well, it's your own fault because you told them." Mm-hmm. He said, you really got to think about that. Maybe use a little bit more wisdom. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we want to, I don't know what it is about guys. Guys do this a lot. We have a tendency to want to mend all our fences right now. We don't want to, because that's kind of our nature. If a guy gets in a fight with another guy, they're playing basketball 10 minutes later. They're buddies, When women get into fights, it doesn't heal right away, does it? I mean,
well,
isn't it more of a process? Aren't you guys more processors?
I don't know if that's true. I think that's a generalization because
Yeah, it could be, huh?
I'm one of those people that likes resolution quickly.
Are you?
Yes, but I haven't always had the guts to get that going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Depending
right.
on what dynamic has got me stuck.
The important thing here is is really if you're seeking somebody to work these steps with you, I really encourage you, regardless of where you are in your relationship with God or believing in God, or just pray. Mm-hmm. Just pray and ask the Creator to guide you. God has a marvelous way of putting people together. And believe me, you're going to be helping the person sponsoring you in many ways, sometimes more than they're actually helping you. There's a lot of truth to that. Mm-hmm. Okay, we could go into this even more, and maybe we will. Maybe next week when Bruce comes back, we'll talk about his take on sponsorship, because there's more elements of this. Is it ever okay to fire a sponsor? Is it ever okay to fire a sponsee? How long do you put up with a sponsee that's not doing the work? So we barely scratched the surface here. So I think we'll continue this discussion next week. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the topic of grief. This is something that you will not avoid in your life. If you've had a hunky-dory life and everything's been just, pickles and parachutes, I don't know where that came from, but look out, because grief is coming knocking on your door. It's part of life, and walking through it is something that is important to be able to do that, especially as addicts and alcoholics. We'll be right back.
When I first came to Serenity Springs, I never thought I could stay clean and sober. And then after being through the 12 steps and getting closer to God and just learning how to live, I can't imagine life with drugs and alcohol anymore.
Introducing Serenity Springs Recovery Center, a fully licensed residential drug and alcohol dependence treatment center for men, specializing in helping individuals with substance abuse problems. Addiction is a disease that deteriorates the body, punishes the mind, and destroys the spirit. Addiction needs to be attacked on all three of these fronts.
They work the steps, they work them extremely hard. Finding God is a big part, and that's what they did for me. They gave me a life second to none.
Residents live in resort-style accommodations and are able to participate in numerous on-site activities.
Golf and working out, playing basketball a lot.
Serenity Springs is a unique facility that is committed to providing exceptional individual care in small group settings.
They talk about life beyond your wildest dreams. I never thought that was possible for me, and today I'm living it.
And just being connected. Guys are like my brothers, just a big family.
At Serenity Springs, they want to make a life-changing investment into your recovery. For more information, contact their 24-hour admissions department at 386-423-4540 or visit their website at serenityspringsrecovery.com.
It's really amazing what's happened. I mean, it's nothing short of a miracle.
Welcome back, and we've just finished talking about sponsorship and touching on some of the aspects of a sponsor and a sponsee, and and all that good stuff. I wanted to talk just a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of time to do this, but and I do want to talk about this topic and dedicate a whole show to it because I think it's that important. But grief, mourning the loss, particularly mourning the loss of someone or something that you love. And I know this is going to sound really silly, but sometimes the thing can be an inanimate object.
Sure.
We say it's silly to love our car or to love our house or whatever, but I'll bet you there's people out there, Eve, that have, like, for instance, let's take a piece of property that lived and grew up, and then something happened where they had to move away, and they turned back and they looked at their home with sadness and grief. There is a separation that's occurring here, and a lot of memories built up there. So people can have attachments to things, and I don't know that that's necessary. It gets a bad rap. It's necessarily something that's unnatural. I think it's natural to have that. I remember when my 12-step home group moved, and I had been there for years. There was something about leaving that place that was painful. Some forms of grief, depending on the individual, can be a lot more drastic and linger.
Yes.
And the reason I'm bringing this up, listeners, is many of you know that Sunday afternoon. My family came home from church and we found our house kitty had passed away. And this was a cat. Her name was Hazel. This was a cat that was neurotic. We used to call her Hitler Kitty because she was just bizarre. But she was healthy. She never had a flea on her. She never got sick. She was just, and we noticed something was a little odd for a couple of days. And then we came home and my wife called me upstairs and we found her halfway in her litter box and halfway out, and she had passed away.
Yes.
And it absolutely ripped my heart out. And I was surprised. I have a tender spot for the animal kingdom, and maybe a little too tender sometimes. But I was really shocked because this was not a pet of ours that I was particularly close with. But nevertheless, it tore me. I found myself crying uncontrollably, weeping to the point of not being able to see straight for a good day and a half. And I want to share with the listeners that if you have not experienced this, you will experience this, and it's okay. It's all right. It's part of life. If you've experienced it and you've gotten through it, use your experience to help somebody else walk through it, whether it's your kids or your spouse or a friend. And I'm going to talk about the 5 areas of grief here real quickly, but I want to tell you that something really cool happened. When my dog Sakima passed away several years ago, he and I were just as close as peas in a pod. And when he passed away, we had to put him down because he was in so much pain. There was hip problems and so forth, and he struggled. He fought with us for the doctor to give him the injection, and I had to muzzle him, and he was not happy with me. And so the last thing I remember was my poor Sakima confused. Why is Daddy doing this? And that there was a process there. It took a long time for me to get past that. But my wife had a dream a few days afterwards that Sakima was sitting in the doorway of our front of our house, and instead of seeing outside, seeing the neighborhood, she saw this heavenly setting that was just incredible and just beautiful. And Sakima was just glowing, and she shared that with me. And the healing that took place, and her just sharing that with me, it was like, yeah, I'm okay now. And something happened that was just a trip. Sunday or Monday, the next day, I was just struggling so hard. Jeff Bates, who his interview is coming up on April 4th, country western singer and recovered alcoholic and drug addict. We had done an interview. He sent me. I received his CD in the mail on Monday, and I'm on the way to a meeting, which I didn't want to go to. I didn't want to see anybody, but I just knew I needed to get out of the house. And I popped the CD in. And normally when I pop a CD in, I just let it play.
Yes.
But for some reason or another, I pushed the select button to track number 6.
Why?
I do not know.
You didn't know the name of that
Nope.
track?
I had no idea. I just went to 6. And it was a song called If You Could See Me Now.
Oh, wow.
And it was actually about a child who had passed away and was telling his or her folks, if you could see me now, I'm swinging on a swing. And if you could see me now, I would tell you that you're here too early. That God's not finished with you, but I'll see you when you're done.
Wow.
You know, and if you could see me now, your tears would go away because I'm okay. I'm getting shook at the time now. The healing properties of that song, it was just came right at the right time. And I wasn't done grieving, but the intensity of the grief subsided.
Yes.
And it was okay. And it's just marvelous. And people say, well, coincidences. Well, I don't know about you. How come every time I pray, a coincidence happens? You know, and I was able to share that in this meeting. And then I was watching some people in the meeting who were going through some really, some heavy duty grieving processes that were a lot more more drastic than mine even was. But there's these 5 stages of grief that we go through that are commonly known. What are they known as, Eve?
The stages of grief.
Yeah, but who's the author of that?
Kubler-Ross.
Kubler-Ross, right. And number 1 is denial and isolation. This isn't true. This isn't really happening. They can't be gone. You know, this... And I wonder, and this doesn't mean that we go through these in this order every single time.
That's right.
But I'll tell you, it was like I couldn't go to that part. Sometimes denial saves us, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a good defense.
I couldn't go there because there Hazel was.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm holding her in my arms. I'm putting her in the box. There was no time to convince myself it wasn't real. It was so real, you know. And but I did move into to a depression, you know, where I was just weeping uncontrollably. I don't know that I moved into bargaining. I don't know if that happened. Probably, I guess you could say that going through the what ifs. What if we had done this? What if we had done that? Could have been part of that bargaining chip, you know. Anger, I definitely felt anger towards myself.
Yes.
I was really angry at myself that we couldn't have done something, you know, if we had just been more observant, if we just, you know, all that stuff. And the acceptance piece really came when I heard that song.
Yes.
You know, how important is it that we experience grief when these things happen?
Well, the important thing to know is that you are going to experience it, whether it's right when the event happens or down the road. I've experienced the down the road, and then it's really hard to explain to people what I'm experiencing now had to do with what happened years ago.
Yeah, because shouldn't you have been over that by now? Have you ever heard that?
Yes, but I guess actually, as you read that, my denial was actually so strong at the event, and it was so traumatic.
Really?
My denial was so strong that I actually disconnected from it for over a year before I actually came out of denial when God saw fit that I was ready to deal with it.
But that was important that happened, right?
It was very important.
Yeah.
I couldn't have survived. And to be able to survive was very important because I had absolutely no support system in place at that time.
Wow.
That was part of the dynamic. It was that huge of a loss. So, that's important. The other thing to know about the 5 stages of grief is that they're not necessarily going to be in order. And also you can revisit some stages if there's work that's left undone. But the chances of you going through all of them are pretty good. And I want to share something from a book called Grace Disguised by Gerald Stittler, I believe is the author's name. And this gentleman wrote this book over a year's time after he lost most in his family to a drunk driver. And he was left, I think in his van was his mother, his wife, and his 5 children, and in the accident, all but 2 of the children passed.
Wow.
As well as he himself. So he wrote this book, and he's a Christian author, but the book, I'll tell you, is so down to earth and so does not speak in any type of Christianese type speak. It's very real, heartfelt, and this guy barely makes it during that year. And in the beginning, he talks about being afraid of going to sleep, and because of the darkness that is there.
Wow.
But on the other hand, he knows he needs to sleep, and so a lot of his time is spent in this this area between actually sleeping and being awake. And so it's like wakeful dreams. That's the word he uses. He kept having wakeful dreams. And in this wakeful dream, he sees himself running after the setting sun and being afraid of it going down and him being left in the darkness. And about a week later, he shares this with his sister over the phone. And she says, "Oh, that sounds just like a poem I read by a 17th century poet named John Donne." And I can't remember the name of the poem right now, but she's responding to her brother, and she says, in the poem, the man is also chasing after the sun, the setting sun,
really?
Because he doesn't want it to go down, and he's afraid of the light going out. And then suddenly the man realizes that the way to find the light is actually to turn around and face the east and walk through the darkness and meet the rising sun. And so the message there is to face into the pain, to walk, to find the courage, pray for the courage to go into the darkness, to go into the pain, to meet the rising sun, to get through it, so that you'll be whole. Mm-hmm.
I really hadn't thought about this until now, but it's just amazing. No thought of medicating ever did occur to me. I didn't like it. I wanted it to end, and part of me didn't want it to end. But I knew it was a process, and that the old tapes that says we've talked about how the brain works. Do it the way you always did it. Handle it
Yes.
the way you always handled it. Take a drink. Just have one beer, just to calm your nerves. That kind of thing. None of that was there. And so that's there's a lot of gratitude. I have a lot of gratitude for that, and it didn't transfer into something else either, because I'm on a very strict eating program right now, and I didn't medicate that way. It didn't even cross my mind to medicate that way. I didn't want to get sick, plus be emotional.
Yes, but that's phenomenal, really,
is.
Considering just the short amount of time that you've been doing this new eating.
Because it's been out a month and a half now.
Right.
Yeah. And so if you're going through grief, if you've lost somebody, if you've lost a pet, and I got to tell you, I had a harder time with the passing of Sakima than I did with my own mother. And I felt guilt over that.
Yeah.
You know, but it is what it is, and we can walk through these things, you know, in victory, and that's what's really cool about it. And now I can look at Hazel's picture and not bawl my eyes out.
Yes, yes.
All right. So anyway, and sometime we'll commit a whole show to this topic of grief, because there's a lot more to it than what I've touched on here. But perhaps for my own healing process, I needed to talk about it on the air, because so many people, and that's another thing, so many people responded on Facebook with so many wonderful things. People that never respond to anything I post responded to it. You know,
Yeah.
it was really cool. Okay, my mic's acting weird. Okay, so we're going to close with this song. This song is by Mercy Me. It is called The Hurt and the Healer.
Oh, one of my favorites. This is such a phenomenal song.
This really is. So check it out, folks, and then we'll close out the show.
The question that is never far away, but this heart and breathe it back to life. Fall into your arms open wide. When the hurt and the healer collide. Come and break my fear, wake my heart and take my tears. Find the glory even here. When the hurt and the healer collide. Jesus, come and break my fear, wake my heart and take my tears. Find the glory even here. When the hurt and the healer. Jesus, come and break my fear, wake my heart, take my tears, and find your glory even here.
Till our next broadcast, we're wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.